So I just came back from a yoga class today, and as I was in the class, I was reflecting a lot on how much I've learned about self-development, about even psychological self-development from the practice of yoga. So I've always enjoyed physical exercise, I've always enjoyed bodybuilding, I've always enjoyed the challenge and the experience of growth and learning new things and discovering that your body is capable of doing things beyond what you thought it could. You can see that progression. When you go to the gym and you work out hard for 4 months, when you look in the mirror, you can see the change. Yoga is a little bit different. Yoga is different in that the change is more subtle. You feel it more than you see it. And the process is very, very focused on finding your weaknesses, finding where you are stiff, finding where you lack balance, finding both your strengths and your weaknesses, and essentially learning how to use your strengths to overcome and improve on your weaknesses. Now, this process takes years to do well. So it's very gradual. And the key to yoga, the key to developing your body in this way, is very similar to the keys to developing your mind psychologically, is figuring out your strengths, figuring out your weaknesses, and learning to use your strengths to overcome your weaknesses, and having heaps of patience, because it is a slow process. It doesn't need to feel abusive. It used to be when I'd go to the gym and I'd want to change my body, I'd smash it. I'd smash it hard. I'd usually end up injuring myself, and then I couldn't work out for a few weeks, which means I lost ground. It was chaotic. It was aggressive. It was intense. And I still tend to gym with an enormous amount of energy and focus and push myself to my limits. But I've learned from yoga to do it with more respect for myself, with more understanding and respect for my limits. And rather than trying to smash through them, which is very likely to injure myself, I look at them as something that I'm gradually working away at. It's a little bit more like trying to melt an iceberg. You do it gradually. You do it by increasing the temperature around. Otherwise, it's going to stay an iceberg forever. Hope that wasn't a bad analogy, but it's a similar process. Anytime I have some aspect of my psychology that feels unconquerable, for me, social anxiety, stage fright, my not good enough story, my sense of extreme introversion and just not knowing how to feel comfortable around people that I didn't know. These were icebergs for me. These were huge icebergs. But what I find fascinating is that all of these I've conquered to a large extent. And what it took was patience, persistence, consistency of practice, and simply accepting that this is not going to happen overnight. This is going to be a process that may take most of my life. But looking back, I can see tremendous change. Now, the reason yoga stands out to me in this way, I love the parallels here. When I was about 6 years old, I was a very curious kid. I loved climbing trees. They were fun, they were challenging, they were interesting. I could get up into the top of a tree, and it was kind of a secret place that was just mine. Adults couldn't get there. I loved it. Except one day, I fell asleep in the top of a tree, and when I woke up, I thought there was a branch where I was about to step, and I didn't look, there wasn't, and I fell quite a distance. It was roughly 10 meters. Now, I bounced on some big branches on the way down, so it wasn't a straight fall. But when I landed and bounced twice, I snapped my right leg, broke my femur. And I was in the hospital for close to 6 months in a cast, kind of a wheelie chair kind of thing. And when they did the rehabilitation, I recovered quite well. I was actually told I would probably never walk again. Clearly, that was not the case. Fortunately, they told my mom I would probably never walk again. No one ever bothered to tell me, so that was probably a good thing as a kid. Just, of course I'm going to walk again. But when they went through the physical therapy, they only rehabilitated the leg that had been in the cast. But it was a body cast, so the problem was they went through all of the muscular stretching and all of the process around my right leg, which I had broken. But my other leg, which was also immobilized for about 6 months, got no attention. And what I've noticed is most of my life, that means that I'm lopsided in certain things. I'm very tight and stiff on one side. My IT bands, my adductors, my abductors, my legs, my lower back, these are trouble areas for me. So the reason I got into yoga was that these were always interfering with my ability to do certain sports, certain aspects of weightlifting, certain aspects of dance. I couldn't sit cross-legged. I'd have back pain just because I put more pressure on one side than the other. I'd be leaning a little bit. So I decided I needed to work on this. And when I went into it, I'm now 47 years old. I thought, there's no chance I'm going to be able to fix it now. My whole life, this muscle's actually grown and developed to be shorter than other muscles in the opposite leg, as an example. And you could see if I would go to stretch a certain way, I'm like, well, I can't move at all on that side. On this side's okay. On that side, nothing. Just not happening. And I couldn't really get great advice from physios because there was kind of, you could walk, that's good enough. And because it was a problem that only surfaced when I was looking to do intense or difficult sporting activities, they really didn't see it as a priority, and they saw it as a very difficult challenge, fixing multiple different muscles, perhaps joints, perhaps tendons, and they just saw it as a lost cause. So I turned to yoga just to see what can I do to improve this in a meaningful way, and it has been slow. It has required a lot of persistence. But what's really fascinating is that I can see and feel the change week after week after week. Not class after class, but I'd definitely say between weeks, definitely across months, I can see small bits of progression. I can see more comfort. I can see more core strength. I can see my balance improving dramatically. For me, this was one of the biggest problems was I tried to stand on one leg and balance, and I couldn't because one side of my leg is tighter than the other, so I'd get pulled off balance. The moment I try to straighten my leg, I'd get pulled over. And it was so frustrating. So I wanted to see what would happen. Now, as I go through this process, one of the great things about yoga in particular is that you're very focused on what's happening inside your body. For those of you who have ever done meditation or done something like Vipassana, you understand that process of bringing your mind completely, your attention is inside your skin. And the same process for me happens in psychological development. It's developed from this kind of, when I started self-development, I would have some area of my life I didn't like. I'd feel immensely frustrated about it. I'd feel like I'm never going to be able to change it. I'd feel like I must have been traumatized or injured as a child in some way, just like my broken leg incident, right? I can remember, I would pinpoint my introversion and distrust of people to a bullying incident that I had as a kid, which I still remember. I still remember everything about it, right? So, in a sense, that was a traumatic incident like falling out of the tree. And emotionally, it certainly had an impact on me. Now, I had no control over that. I have no control over changing that now. What I do have is the ability to look at my strengths, look at my weaknesses, look at the problem I'm trying to solve, and develop a program which allows me to gradually improve that day after day after day. Perhaps one of the biggest examples of this for me psychologically was conquering stage fright. I used to be scared to death of getting up in front of people. I wouldn't even want to stand up in class or stand up in a group. That feeling of all eyes on me, that feeling of so much expectation, that feeling of I might fuck this up, right? And then I would just be laughed at. That was petrifying for me. And I hated that. I hated that limitation. I hated that feeling of being that afraid of something that I could feel that this thing was in between me and where I wanted to go in my life. And the way I conquered it was a bit interesting. I was really fascinated by drumming, playing the drums, right, the musical instrument. And I got exposed to Japanese taiko drumming, where they play big drums, and it's a bit like a martial art. There's a lot of aggression and fury and energy, and it's a beautiful sport. And I got into building a team with 2 business partners and just having some fun playing with drums, building drums, learning some songs, just having a jam until we start getting asked out for performances. And for me, that was like, no, that's not why I joined this. I wanted to exercise. I wanted to learn the drums. I wanted to have some fun. I am not getting up in front of people on a stage and gonna look like an idiot because I'm not going to do it right. I had no self-confidence about it. But the great thing about starting with that as my stage experience, as my confronting my limitations around the stage, my limiting beliefs, was that I got to do it with a group. I wasn't the only one on stage. I got to go on stage with up to 10 other people, and we're all doing exactly the same thing. So even if I do fuck it up, break a stick, it goes flying into the audience, something like that, I forget where I am in the song, I have other people I can catch up with, and the audience can easily, the whole picture, the big picture looks okay, even if one guy is off his board doing something different. So I wasn't comfortable with it, but I was comfortable enough that it was within my limits of tolerable psychological pain. And that was exactly where I needed to be. I needed to be in that discomfort zone. Again, paralleling to yoga, I need to be in that place where it's not comfortable, but it's also not excruciatingly painful, right? Same for gym. If it doesn't hurt, you're not going to grow. You really need to hit that point beyond your comfort where your muscles are being challenged, where your mind is being challenged, and where your brain says those muscles need to grow. Same thing for yoga. Those muscles need to stretch. They need to extend. We need change to happen. And the reality that I'm seeing here is that any change, your mind or your body, is going to be met with resistance by your mind and by your body. And I think there is a natural reason for this, which is that the status quo, the way things currently are, is keeping you alive. So your body will say, why change? If you've ever tried to gain weight or lose weight, you've probably seen this in effect. You'll change your diet, you'll change your exercise routine, you'll work your butt off at it, and nothing is happening. You're like, what the heck? I'm eating half as much, not losing any weight. Your body will resist that, and then all of a sudden, about 2 months later, it'll start making change. In fact, I had that exact experience just now. I've been working on diet and nutrition and exercise since January, February this year. It is now September, and I've been measuring my waist, and I've been doing all kinds of things, and just no change. I can see myself looking slimmer and tighter and healthier, but I wasn't getting change. And then, all of a sudden, when I took my measurement last week, significant change. It was fascinating to me to see how much resistance my body would put up to changing such a simple thing. But to your body, this change is a survival risk. And I think the same thing happens in your mind. So much of your life, your world, your reality relies on your mind that any change that your mind goes through, especially letting go of a fear, is something that your mind is going to meet with substantial resistance. The beautiful thing is it can be conquered. For me, with my fear of stages. Putting myself in that uncomfortable situation is known in psychological circles as immersion therapy. And I didn't know that at the time, but I did it, and it worked. It worked wonders. After performing with a team, I would end up doing smaller and smaller team performances. Then I ended up taking the lead, either the front center drum or the giant, what they call the odaiko drum, where I smash it with these giant sticks. Ended up doing 500 performances, and I'd say after about 200, I couldn't sense any real fear anymore. I could just walk out on stage on Sky City. I could walk onto TV. I'd done TV interviews live. I can't even imagine that would have been possible just 200 performances earlier. So I think the ingredients of change are very important to understand. Understanding how to create that discomfort for yourself so that your body or your mind or both have to change to accommodate that new stressful situation. Being persistent in putting yourself in that situation so that your body or your mind can't avoid the change. And being patient. Being patient. Time is a factor. Don't expect change to happen overnight. I see a lot of guys who, for example, feel a lot of anxiety around approaching strangers, particularly around approaching an attractive woman and saying hello. And they feel this intense anxiety. And then they read some books, and then they go to some classes, and then they talk to some guys who have more experience than they do. And then they get out there and they go and they practice as best as they can. And they still feel that anxiety. And it's frustrating. It's frustrating because they imagine that it should just disappear overnight. And that's not the case. It's never been the case in my experience. Change takes time. So, find the things in your life that you want to change, both physically and psychologically. And I encourage you to write down an actual program of how you can create discomfort in the direction you want to go. What will promote muscular growth? What will promote fat loss? What will promote improvements in your balance, improvements in your stability? What will make you more comfortable in crowds of strangers? What will make you more comfortable in confrontations? You're looking for those stressful points that will encourage growth, and persist at it. Just persist at it. This is the absolute key to any change that you want to happen in your life. There's a great quote. I don't even know who said it. I have to look it up now. The idea is that you don't need to change much in your life in order to completely change your life. The idea is even a 1% change in your course, in the direction you're going, is not a big change. But 10 years from now, that 1% change in the direction you're going took you to a completely different place. So understanding how to create that constant stress for growth is a central, fundamental pillar of your ability to succeed in any kind of self-development. I wish you luck.